I go to every forest twice. The first trip starts when I start planning. My imagination runs wide with everything that I can possibly see and photograph. This trip ends when I actually arrive at the forest. There, it makes way for the second one, in which images are recorded on my camera and not just in my mind. Often, these two trips are alike, but every now and then, they are worlds apart.
I'm in Borneo this morning. The beautiful, lush green forest of Borneo all around me. Borneo is the third largest island in the world. It's over 7,400 square kilometers in area. Borneo is highly biodiverse. There are over 14,000 species of plants, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and birds here. There are over 400 species of mammals, of which 40 are endemic, which means that they're only found in Borneo and nowhere else in the world. And I'm here to photograph one of those species of endemic mammals here, the Bornean orangutan. Over the years, there have been some amazing photos of the orangutan from Borneo, and I'm hoping to get something that showcases the orangutan in its magnificent green, unique habitat. Yes, I'm yet to see an orangutan, and I'm already hoping for the kind of food I want to get. I do see the funny side of that, but yes, such are the hopes. We're in Tanjung Puting National Park right now. We're cruising along the river. We started off on the Kumai River, now we're in the Sekuna River. And we're going to be spending the next 5 days on this boat, or the floatalk as it's called in the local language. We're mostly going to be looking for wildlife along the edges of the forest. Every now and then we'll stop for short treks into the forest, look for wildlife. And we're also going to be visiting feeding centers, orangutan feeding centers along this river. We're in fact headed to our first feeding center right now.
The first rescue, rehabilitation and rewilding camp, Camp Liki, was set up in Tanjung Puting by Dr. Birut Gladikis in 1971. With over 80% of Borneo's primary forests lost to human needs, the 80s and 90s saw a lot of orangutans displaced from forests. There were also a lot of orangutans in pet trade and trafficking. These orangutans were brought to camps in Tanjung Puting to be rehabilitated and rewilded. Over the years, about 900 orangutans have been returned to the wild across 3 camps in Tanjung Puting. They're joining a thriving population of 30,000 wild orangutans already living there.
So we've been walking for about 20 minutes now, and as you can see, some of these feeding stations are set up fairly deep in the jungle, and it is very much a rainforest all around us. This could very well have been a place where orangutans sort of lived, hung about, etc. And we're now going to a place where there is some kind of a platform of sorts set up where they're going to put fruits or any other food for the orangutan to come and feed. We did see orangutans, about 4 of them, and we saw a large group of long-tailed macaques. As we had been told, they were here solely for the purpose of eating the corn that people put out there. But yeah, it sort of wasn't the same as seeing an orangutan while you're walking in the jungle or riding along a boat.
Feeding stations were exactly what their name suggested. Platforms where corn, potatoes, bananas, and assorted favorites from the orangutan menu were served. I had a slight sense of dissonance about feeding stations. Is it really a wildlife experience if orangutans appeared at feeding stations at stipulated times? Are they really wild orangutans? So I spoke to Sumit, fellow photographer and good friend, about this.
I'm kind of wondering where on a spectrum of seeing animals in a zoo versus photographing something like a bird on a tree when you're walking in the forest, this lies on. And we have Sumit, who's my good friend and fellow wildlife photographer on this trip, to help me make sense of this.
Everything I'm learning is from the guides and the documentation. And this whole rewilding experience has been going on since the 70s and the 80s. Captive animals, animals in the pet trade, illegal trafficking, all of that, right? And what I've learned is that rewilding takes a long time. Orangutans need time to adjust to their habitat, find the food. And to a certain extent, because of the damage we've caused, they need some supplementary support. So they're all free-ranging, they're wild.
Yeah.
But if there's tempting food, they will come.
Yeah.
Right? The question, however, is how many animals do we shoot which are not habituated?
Sure.
And like, for example, in India, tigers,
Yeah.
you see them in a part of the forest where there are no vehicles, you will not be able to shoot them. But if you see them in a tourism area, much easier to shoot.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way I think about these apes here.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it in the sense that they're all free-ranging. They were brought here for rewilding maybe 15, 20 years ago. The process is still ongoing. They've all been saved from trafficking and pet trade, and they're all free-ranging orangutans which are free to carry on their own way, which most of them have, and they've not done is what we've understood, so that's great. But I'm still looking forward to chancing upon one when we are sort of doing a boat ride or walking in the jungle. How likely do you think that is?
We have a few boat rides and walks. Maybe we'll bump into a couple there.
We then decided to look for orangutans outside feeding stations and sought the help of rangers. This part came with no dissonance whatsoever. The long wait that is the essence of any wildlife trip. The anticipation for something to walk or crawl or leap by.
So we're waiting at a really beautiful place right now. Not so much because it's a beautiful place to wait, but it's one of the few places on the river which has any signal, and we are hoping to hear from rangers who are keeping track of the orangutans. We haven't had much to see in the last day and a half, but we're hoping that we will be able to hear some news today, and that's what this trip is like. We are sort of cruising up and down the river. We are making photos of what we find, but mostly we're waiting for either birds that we're waiting for to show up or to hear news about the orangutan. Right now we're just chilling on the boat. The crew is picking fresh fish from the river for lunch, and the rest of us are just chilling. Some of us are looking at our photos. It's really hot to be looking for wildlife now, but nonetheless, the minute we hear about any orangutans or their whereabouts, we'll be headed in that direction.
Soon enough, we got news of an orangutan some distance away, for which we needed another mode of transportation. The orangutan our rangers were tracking went by the name Chantek. She was brought here 8 years ago and has been adapting well to rewilding. Her first offspring, Canada, is not even a year old yet. Chantek and Canada are nearing the final stages of the rewilding process. Canada will stay close to Chantek until he's almost 6 years old. Throughout her lifespan, Chantek may have 1 or 2 more young ones. This realization made the 3 hours we spent with her that afternoon all the more precious. Over the next couple of days, we saw more orangutans.
So we heard news about an orangutan in this area. A ranger called our guide. We're now in the area where it was seen, but it was somewhere high up in the tree. So, well, if orangutans don't want to be seen, they don't be seen. Let's see if we're able to find it or not. We're actually coming back to where we started from, so I don't know if it's there. Oh, some people are photographing what I think is an orangutan on a tree there. Yeah, there it is.
Orangutans are solitary animals. Their diet is mostly fruits, but they also eat insects and leaves. They have adapted well to spend nearly all their lives up in treetops, avoiding the forest floor. The canopy is where they feed, nest, and seek shelter from the rain. The forest canopy is also their mode of transportation. Over 6 days, we saw a lot of wildlife, including primates like the long-tailed macaques, the proboscis monkeys, and the silver langurs. We also saw a number of birds, including an incredibly rare storm stork, of which less than 500 individuals remain. And yet, it was not the rich, biodiverse rainforest that we hoped for. So I asked Sriram, fellow photographer and naturalist, whether he thought about it the same way as well.
So Sriram, my good friend and photographer, has been with us on this trip, and sometime back he was giving me context about these being secondary or rewilded or replanted forests as opposed to primary forests. Could you share a little more context on that?
I think we've been walking around the forest for the past week or so, right? And one of the things that we would have observed is that the forests are, they don't have very tall trees. They don't have too many of these, what we call as dipterocarps and stuff. It's a lot of short trees, a lot of saplings, a lot of trees in various stages of growth, and largely open patches as well. So these forests are what are known as secondary forests because these are not old growth forests. These are forests that have been over a period of time logged and used for other purposes. Every 4 years when the El Nino happens, dipterocarp trees are known to have this massive seeding season where there's a lot of seeds absolutely. That kind of come out and stuff, and it also kind of corresponds with the season of plenty at that point of time. So a lot of animals kind of tend to thrive off that abundance, and with those trees disappearing, the season of abundance also disappears. So you actually see that the entire nature of the forest kind of changes when you remove some of these keystone species from the forest as such, and that's what we're probably observing.
That probably underscores the importance of some of these rewilding centers and the feeding stations they therefore have, is that orangutans need those tall dipterocarps, fruiting trees, and seasons of plenty to thrive. And in the absence of that, till such time maybe the forest gets as good as, if such a thing is possible, as the primary forests, there are these feeding stations substituting and substantiating an orangutan's diet and so on and so forth. What do you think?
I kind of partially agree with that, of course, as in I think that also helps because the forest is still rejuvenating and stuff. The other part, probably why the feeding stations are also important, is because many of these orangutans are being released back into the forest. They're being rewilded into the forest, right? These are and these efforts are very important because you want to. The forest is not just about the trees. The forest is also about the animals that make up the biodiversity over there. And orangutans are, again, your keystone species from a mammal perspective in forests like this. So I think the feeding centers serve both the purposes that way. And we've also observed, I think, right, like where there's a lot of probably food in the forest, we've not seen a lot of orangutans. But then there's not a lot of food, we've seen a lot more orangutans at those feeding centers.
Tanjung Puting was more curated than I imagined, but that allowed me to spend more time with orangutans. I saw how similar they are to us in their mannerisms, their expressions, and the way they use their hands, and the way they care for their young. I'm happy with some of the photos I've made, but they are so different, both in perspective and in emotion, from what I first had in mind. The highlight of the trip for me was spending time with Chantek in Canada. Watching them play, roll in trees, and see how Canada was copying almost everything that Mom did. But there was this one moment when Chantek showed us how smart she is. When she used a twig, like a spear, to pull a piece of corn from the river below. I'd read about orangutans learning from people to use tools, but to see her come up with this was incredible. I'm sure I'll be coming back to Borneo again. And I'm sure I'll visit Tanjung Puting again. There's a part of me that wants to see and photograph Chantek again. But there's also a part of me that doesn't want to see her when I return. That hopes that she gets fully rewilded and goes deep into the jungle where the boats don't reach. Whichever journey awaits me, I'm looking forward to it.